It's a shabby way to end a gospel. Any of us could have done better than Mark chapter 16, verse 8. Overcome with terror and dread, they fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. People obviously were not satisfied with the way Mark left it there, just that dangling non-ending to the story. So other people wrote other endings to Mark, and you'll find them in most of your Bibles, but scholars all agree they were tagged on later. Some tried to suggest that Mark's gospel sort of had the last page torn off from it somewhere along the way. It must have had a better ending than that. But I wonder, what if that is the way Mark intended to end it? Just with these women running away from the tomb, shell-shocked, amazed, frightened, overwhelmed by what they had found. Maybe that's what the angel had meant all along. After all, the first thing we hear from the empty tomb is the angel saying to these women, "Don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He has been raised. He isn't here. Look, here's the place where they laid him. Go, tell the disciples that he is going ahead of you into Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you." Feels like Mark is saying, you're never really going to understand or know the power of the resurrection at the tomb. You're going to know the power and presence of the risen Christ on the road that leads back to Galilee as you go on into the future to which God has called you. Maybe that's what Mark intended. Thankfully, we have the other Gospels with the post-resurrection narratives that paint the picture of what it looks like for people to live with the risen Christ present at work in their life with all their questions, their doubts, their fears, the way he meets them where they are and prepares them for what's out ahead, sets them in the direction of the ascension and then of Pentecost, when they will be filled with the power of the Spirit to bear witness to him. Mark's dangling non-ending of the story, it used to bother me. But then I realized that my best efforts to pull all the pieces together, to bring a solid conclusion to every story, my life is filled with incomplete sentences, goals that never fully are reached, reconciliation that never is quite accomplished, problems that never find a simple solution, stories that have no last chapter, that are still hanging out there. Maybe Mark intends for us to know that we live with those loose ends in the confidence that we are not alone, that the risen Christ goes before us, always calling us to something better. I'm not an authority on opera, but the story is told of Puccini, who in his last work, Turandot, died before he had finished it. The first performance was in Milan, April 25, 1926. Arturo Toscanini, the greatest conductor of the time, had the baton. They reached the point in the opera where Puccini ended. Toscanini abruptly stopped the performance, laid down his baton, turned to the stunned audience and said, "Here, the maestro died." He turned, walked away. The curtain came down, the astonished audience left in silence, the non-ending of the opera still hanging in their memory. The next day, the orchestra and the performers returned to the opera house, and they picked up the opera with the new ending that Alfano had written. And that's the way the performance has been presented ever since. The person who finished the story that Puccini had begun, and the story is carried on. I suggest to you that Mark's dangling ending of his gospel is the invitation for us to write the next chapter, to write the concluding act, to participate in the fulfillment of the story as we walk into the future in the presence of the risen Christ. May he be walking with you.